Cabinet Police and Fire on Thursday 4th of September 2025. I'd like to welcome from Police Scotland Superintendent Paul Douglas, first time attending this meeting, and he's the Deputy Divisional Commander for Greater Glasgow, and Chief Inspector Gillian Folds, the Area Commander for East Renfrewshire. From Scottish Fire and Rescue, we'd also like to offer a warm welcome to Eddie Kenna, Area Commander, Local Senior Officer for Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde area, and it's also his first time attending this committee, and Alan Cochtery, the Group Commander for East Renfrewshire. So if we can move straight on to the agenda. First item is report apologies for absence. I note that Danny Devlin and Gordon Wallace are not here today.
I've not received apologies, Chair, but those councillors are not here.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? None. So we'll move on to the third item of the agenda, which is Police Scotland Performance Report for the first quarter of 25-26, and this report will be by the Divisional Commander. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for allowing us to present this report today. Chief Superintendent Croft sends her apologies not being able to make the meeting, and I understand the police report has been circulated amongst members. It's not my intention to go into it in detail, but there's a couple of things I would like to highlight and draw to your attention. Under the acquisitive crime strand, I want to expand a bit on the retail crime task force. There's mention there in terms of an additional funding for Police Scotland of £3 million. We can confirm that that for us, a number of factors, but for the highlights, there's been an uplift of 5 additional officers, 1 sergeant and 4 constables, for the Greater Glasgow Division, obviously encompassing East Renfrewshire, that will focus specifically on retail crime. They will be in post up until the end of the financial year, expected to take up post within the next couple of weeks. Additionally, we've secured through that funding as well. We noticed there's a number in excess of 1,000 small independent retail licensed premises that don't have the financial resilience of some of your larger stores. So what we've secured is 100 licenses in terms of the equivalent of a mobile phone app or the panic alarms. If there was any instances within police in retail crime premises and there's maybe smaller staffing levels that don't have the capacity to contact police or the resilience, this can be done through the app or through the key fob that will be issued, which will then go to an independent automatic receiving centre, a call alarm centre, who can remotely monitor and then decide if police need to be contacted. This is where I come to you with cap in hand a bit, because it's currently ongoing. We're assessing these through a threat, risk and harm demand analysis, and we're looking at a number of these independent shops. So my appeal to yourselves, the process is ongoing, but if you know any small independent retail shops, please contact Gillian and the team, and we'll pass the message on to the teams. They'll come out and make the necessary assessments, but that is ongoing. As I say, we have 100 licences. And just for your own information, I believe it was on the 24th of August, so a week past Sunday, there was 16 premises visited in the Barrhead area that took part in this, that were reviewed in terms of this assessment and crime prevention surveys we're undertaking. So the teams are working away on it, and as I say, that is my ask to you on that. Consider it's my first time, and I know I'm coming here asking for things. Also, just another thing, just one thing I want to touch on very briefly is the violent crime aspect in the report. Understand there is an increase in the non-sexual crimes of violence. Looking into the figures, and these figures are only figures without context. So we did do a bit of a deep dive, and we found that a significant proportion of the rise is down to assaults on emergency workers. That can be attributed to a number of things, but there's an ongoing process within Police Scotland that we're encouraging everyone to report any assaults on them. We have to highlight that assault on any person is unacceptable, especially in a place of work. And we don't want police officers to think it's an occupational hazard, regardless of how minor it might be, of a kick or a slap. There is a drive, and there has been in recent years, for full reporting, and we do believe that is a proportion of the rise. We do expect it to rise further, but as I say, we're alive to it and aware of it. That is a couple of the highlights that I want to bring out in the report. If there's any questions at all, myself and Gillian are more than happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a very helpful update on retail crime. I'll open this up. Caroline.
Thank you. You stole my thunder. I was going to ask you about that. It's very disappointing the number of assaults, but from what you said, it's a bit more reassuring, and it's perhaps not more assaults, more reporting. A bit like what we always ask about is the violence against women, where we're actually encouraged that there's more, but it's not because we're happy that more has happened. It's because they have the confidence to come forward now and for historic cases. So the common assault increase, as you said, it was 27%, and on the emergency workers 110%, and it's something I'll ask the Fire and Rescue Service about later, because I presume, as you said, that's just police officers, but I presume there's going to be an increase in fire officers as well. The message, and I've got another question. I have a question which probably overlaps both, about the vandalism having decreased but fire raising increased. Is it just that they're changed their, what they're doing, going from pure vandalism to actually fire raising, which hasn't been helped by our glorious summer. But could I have clarification on the public protection bit? The bit, sorry, it's the signal in here is terrible, and I'd lost my yeah, I've got it now. Where it's, you mentioned the sexual crimes. Oh, gosh. About it increase, about the aspect of it. There's two different figures. There's 167, I think, and then the next paragraph says, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, it was 121. What is the difference between those figures? And there's mention of some being non-criminal. Can you clarify what is a non-criminal? I'm sure you've explained a bit about that before, but it just helps everyone to understand that. And can I just ask another question about vulnerable road users? You quite often mention about cyclists. There's nothing in this report, and we know, given our nice weather, there's been more cyclists about, and I think we're all aware of some incidents involving cyclists since the start of the year. Do you have any data on that? That all makes sense.
I can come in and cover certainly the public protection aspect. When you see that there's been 167 incidents, so that's not necessarily crimes. So when we talk about incidents, 59% of these incidents were non-criminal in nature, and I think when explained at a previous cabinet, that takes into account your arguments, your domestic incidents. Police are alerted potentially by a third party in a lot of occasions, and we know something has happened, and we will speak to those people independently to see if there has been criminality on that occasion. But it doesn't mean to say we do nothing about it. We still take a note of the people involved, we take their details, and we note them on our vulnerable persons database as a non-crime domestic incident, because we appreciate they might not be ready to report, but if we have to revisit that incident at a later stage, we can come back and confirm if there was an assault. We've got a date, a time, a location, potentially a witness who has reported it through a third party, a neighbour hearing a disturbance. So that will be taken into account for the non-crime incidents. So we still highlight that, because that is still a significant police resource required to deal with these incidents, just to make sure there is no threat, risk and harm, and there's nothing untoward, because we may only get one opportunity to speak to that person to find out if criminality has occurred. So that's the difference in the figures. In relation to road safety, we still have Operation Close Pass on the go, which we run with our colleagues in road policing. And yeah, we do still have concern for cyclists in certain areas. I'm not seeing a trend of increasing concern where cyclists are being run off the road, and certainly if there's incidents being reported to yourselves as elected members, please feel free to come direct to the mailbox. I know nationally there was an issue where we were seeing more deaths on the road with people on mobility scooters, and I just want to highlight that more than what we're seeing with cyclists. We do have an ageing population in East Renfrewshire, so it's just to take that into account. But certainly if there's any issues, any local issues regarding road safety, please come in to me and I can direct the resources when it comes to the days of action in the local area. Hopefully, does that help, Councillor?
Yes, sure.
See, when you mentioned the shouting and the things, and that's not criminal. But we know under the law now, coercive and controlling behaviour and all that falls within that. So do we, if there's a pattern of that when there's no evidence of actually, there's no evidence of, you know, the walking in and somebody's got a black eye or a broken arm, do you still look at that as a pattern of behaviour as criminality then? Have you seen what I mean?
We can look at the pattern of the no crime incidents, but there has to be criminality. It has to meet a threshold. So we would carry out the domestic abuse questions, the risk assessment, because that's where often we will identify that pattern of coercive and controlling behaviour that someone might not see as criminal. But we understand that through relationships there will be arguments, but that doesn't mean to say that an argument is going to criminalise someone's behaviour. So shouting, is there fear and alarm? Is it threatening, abusive? Is the behaviour degrading? Is it humiliating? We have to explore that, especially when it comes to the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act, than purely just, you know, a pattern of arguments where actually we don't have enough to establish criminality, if that makes sense.
Sorry, I think Caroline had a few other comments that have not been responded, and I want to pick up one point in particular about the common assault and emergency workers. I think Caroline suggested it was only police, but I think it's all emergency workers, just to clarify that.
Yeah, the figures will be all emergency workers.
And Caroline, have they answered all your questions? There were quite a few.
Sorry, the emergency, I know, unfortunately, it's all emergency workers, but I think the stats in that report, is that not just for police? I thought that's what you had said in response. Is that for all? Right, thank you. The other question was about the vandalism, about the fact that vandalism's going down but fire reason's going up. Is it just a shift in the same behaviour, but or is it something different?
No, unfortunately, as you highlighted as well, the glorious weather it brings people out, and sometimes in terms of looking at trends and patterns, there is no underlying cause as such. We do find you get a lot of copycat behaviour, instances where opportunity arises more than anything else, whether it's large piles of rubbish lying outside a derelict house or something to that effect, and it's more opportunistic than any trend or pattern as such.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pragnell?
It was just, I've got a question and a comment. So it relates kind of to retail premises. So it was reported in the press that recently in a neighbouring local authority there was a seizure of counterfeit Labubu dolls, that thousands of pounds has been seized. Is this sort of activity going on in East Renfrewshire, given that these toys could be quite dangerous? I think there's been reports of heads coming off these toys. Is that something we're doing in East Renfrewshire proactively if there's any reports of these sorts of counterfeit items being sold? And also I just wanted to say it was actually great to actually have when it's on the tracing and tracking of missing people. I'm pleased to hear that all those that were reported missing were successfully traced. I think it's important to actually recognise this is the first time we've actually seen how much work goes into finding these people, and I think that should really be commended, and that no stone is unturned, because yeah, it's just great that you've managed to find them. But if you could, I did have the same question as Councillor Bamforth on the non-criminal incidents, but that has been answered now. So.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly address both of them. With regards to counterfeit items, we work closely with trading standards throughout the areas, throughout all local authority areas for this. We are very dependent on, well, first of all, our licensing department, but also community intelligence. It is absolutely key. Our community officers, our school engagement officers who are in these shops on a daily basis, and that is absolutely key for us. So we work from the intelligence that's submitted to us. And just now, Gillian can maybe provide more context about the locality, but certainly in terms of any large-scale operations, there's certainly none that I'm aware of. That's not to say they're not going on.
Yeah, certainly I'm not aware of anything locally, Councillor Pragnell, so if there is anything I would certainly reach into myself or encourage communities to submit that intelligence through Crime Stoppers. Certainly I would be made aware of that, and then we can take it forward and it would be actionable. So thanks for, and also thank you very much for highlighting the missing persons. This month we also included the costing for the quarter, which is quite significant, and we don't thankfully have a high volume of missing people in East Renfrewshire, but when we do, you can see that it is very resource intensive, and thankfully they have had positive outcomes, so thank you, I appreciate you highlighting that.
Before I bring in Councillor Anderson, I just want to pick up on that point. That was very helpful to see the volume of work and costs associated with that. Is there anything that we can do on the preventative side of this? We previously talked about this, and it tends to be people with dementia or from care homes, or not entirely, but is there something we can do in terms of work with care homes and the likes to help prevent some of this activity, or are you already doing that?
There is just now a lot of work ongoing with the local communities in terms of missing persons, but we never knock back any help at all. The community teams are really well entrenched in that. I know Gillian's teams are really well linked in with our care homes and some other establishments. But again, if anybody's got any ideas or any thoughts or suggestions, please let Gillian and the team know, because we're more than happy to take those ideas on.
It's just in relation to, we promote the use of the Herbert protocol. We do speak about the expanding life scales in this area. Big high elderly population, dementia will be a factor. So it's encouraging awareness of the Herbert protocol, and I think Alzheimer's Scotland may have done some publicity recently. Whether that's we have seen air tags in people's belongings as well, but just having that information complete, because we know that a lot of people will go to the same areas where they grew up, contact friends that maybe lived in a particular street, and it's having that key information, because we know sometimes they go out no shoes, no bag, so necessarily having something secreted in their clothing or their personal belongings might not always work. But I think it's something we need to be increasingly aware of because of the ageing population in East Renfrewshire. I certainly know recently from the calls that the officers have dealt with, we've managed to find some people pretty quickly because of the family's knowledge and the background provided.
That's very helpful. I wonder, Jamie, Stephen, if we can just tie that up with HSCP in terms of what they're doing on that. Because as you rightly say, we do have a growing population of elderly people. I'm sure they're on it, but it might be useful just to drop us a note for the next cabinet meeting just to say where we are and if that's okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Very much appreciate the report. Very glad to hear about additional resources, because I know it gives you the extra bit of flexibility to respond to the shift patterns, etc. You can have more officers out there, so that's great to hear, because I think we already had 4 new officers not that long ago, 6 to 12 months, I don't know, you can confirm that, but yeah, the more the better. Obviously reassures our communities. Also really interesting to hear about this retailers, the alarm thing, so might have a chat with you after this to if there's any particular areas that in any of our wards where you think there's not been much of an uptake, that we can actually encourage them to participate in that. With regards to the cycling, and there's a particular incident, and maybe I think you're referring to, Caroline, and it was a junction that's caused a lot of concern for people in the community about who's got the right of way, I believe. And in the event that the road traffic officers would actually think there's actually something wrong with the junction, would they feed that back to the roads department within the council to say, yeah, this has happened, but then there's a specific set of reasons why? So it'd be interested to hear if or it was just bad judgment, bad driving. So sorry. Regards to, I've actually kind of confirmed as well, domestic abuse. You talk about like incidents and recording them, but you also talk about there's historical. So I think it's important where you record these small things, because a lot of the time it escalates, and eventually it gets to the point where So if you've got that historical evidence, there's been a pattern, I think it helps your case when it really gets, unfortunately, to a serious level. At least you've got that record. I'd just be interested in some of those points. Thanks.
I could certainly, if there's a particular incident you want me to have a look at in relation to the cycling, I can certainly have a look at that. But if any report that's taken, if we identify an issue regarding a particular junction, that is something that we would share, because it's something that we don't control. But if we've got repeated accidents that are occurring at the same location where there is a danger, we would certainly highlight that to the authority as well, so that we can address it. I know that incidents have been highlighted to me in the past, that when I've done a deeper dive, it's maybe that the location of a roundabout has been selected, but the accident has not actually taken place at that particular roundabout, but it's the nearest identifiable location for our storm system to record the incident. So certainly I know I've fed that back certainly to an MP previously regarding a particular roundabout. And just in relation to domestic abuse, I can cover certainly if we have a no crime incident or a crime incident involving a domestic abuse perpetrator or any sexual offender, that would be recorded on our vulnerable persons database. So even where we don't have sufficiency to charge, we still have that recorded there, and we can go back for that pattern. We've been a single force since 2013, so we are rich in data when it comes to domestic abuse, sexual offending, vulnerability, and we can revisit that at a later stage, and potentially the no crimes can turn into crimes at a later date when someone's ready to report. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace, welcome to the meeting. Is there any points you'd like to raise as far as the police report is concerned?
No, I think under the circumstances, having arrived 10 minutes later, I've missed the presentation. But rather than use up the committee's time, I may direct one or two via email or whatever direct communication if I've got any further queries. Okay, thanks very much for inviting me anyway.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bamforth.
Sorry for not asking this earlier, but it was just in response to the questions there about the domestic violence and about the escalation and about recording and being a single force. Do we, or do you have, I know you can't do it for every case, but a means of if somebody moves, or a couple move, or somebody moves because of they have to move to, for harassment or whatever, do you have a way of tracking people so that, if somebody realises the police are, watching them, or there's been several incidents reported and they move to try and put you off the scent, as it were. Is there a way of tracking domestic incidents, or is it if somebody moves out with Greater Glasgow and Clyde and they move to the Highlands or the Borders, whatever, do you share that? Can everyone access? How could they? Sorry, I'm not making very much sense, but do you know what I mean? It's
Or even another partner.
Yeah, so certainly we know domestic perpetrators move across the country, whether that's in Scotland or elsewhere. So if it's a live investigation, particularly when they're going to move, they may be known through our multi-agency tasking and coordinating process that sits in each local policing division. So we would share that information with that particular division that perpetrator is in their area now. We have perpetrator management plans in place for high-risk domestic offenders. We get information through the local authority if we've got a domestic perpetrator that's of no enough risk, so that we're aware that they're now in our area. If they then have a new partner, we can look at the disclosure scheme as well. And we also have our victims to think of as well as the perpetrators through the MARAC process if they're going to move through, particularly even through the local authority, so we can share it. So we do have strong partnership working when it comes to domestic abuse. It's the ones we don't know about, in particular, that we're not investigating. If we don't know, we can't react. And what I would say about our process in place, we have an escalation process in our vulnerable persons database. If there's 3 incidents, 6 incidents or 9 incidents within 30 days, each of those trigger a certain level of review. So there's a really robust escalation process. and we have national support from the Domestic Abuse Task Force, who target your serial perpetrators, who often have multiple victims spanning across various local policing divisions and can be down south or abroad as well. So we're happy with the information sharing that we've got in place through the multi-agency formats, but we need to know about it so that we can actually share the information through those processes.
Thank you very much. I think we've covered all councillor questions. I wanted to raise a few points, if I may. First of all, some thanks to members of Police Scotland and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for attendance at the Antisocial Behaviour public meeting. I think that in Barrhead recently, that was very informative, and both of your representatives really gave those who attended a really sound view as to how we are dealing with antisocial behaviour, so that was really welcome and we appreciate that. Specifically on the report, can you give us a little bit more information on hate crimes and the increase on that? It's obviously a very febrile time nationally and internationally, so I'd like to understand that a little bit more. And then secondly, which may be a little bit left field, recently I've noticed a lot of DVLA wheel clamps around, so I don't know if you've been involved with that as well in terms of cars not having been adequately taxed.
I can certainly cover the point in relation to hate crime. 10 of those incidents relate to police victims again, so quite a high proportion of that. 2 other incidents relate to the same perpetrator who against shop workers. So again, that was probably the only pattern, that it was the same perpetrator against shop workers, but that perpetrator was a child. In relation to wheel clamping, I've not been getting much highlighted to me in relation to the issue around untaxed vehicles in the area. I mean, we do have days of action, but they tend to focus more on speeding, stopping cars, educating motorists, more around that kind of prevention element. But unfortunately, on occasions, we have had to take some enforcement measures due to the nature of the offences. But if there are particular issues, we've had one recently around zigzags, parking on zigzags in Clarkson, that's just been highlighted, so I'm more than happy to take any queries through the mailbox.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there's been a campaign by the DVLA that we're maybe not aware of. It's been quite noticeable. Okay, so thank you very much for that. So if we've got no other questions on the police report, can we move on to item number 4, which is Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Report for the first quarter 25-26, and this report's been taken by the Group Commander. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair and Cabinet members. Just for everybody's information, my name's Eddie Kenner, and I have the privilege of taking up the role of Local Senior Officer for East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde in June this year. This is my first opportunity to meet many of you in person, and I'm very much looking forward to working closely with the Cabinet and our partners. I am supported here today by my Deputy Commander, Group Commander Alan Cawtrey, and he will shortly take you through the Q1 report in more detail. Before that, I would like to highlight some of the positive work underway in East Renfrewshire. We continue to strengthen our partnership approach, working alongside Police Scotland, East Renfrewshire Council and many other community partners. Looking ahead, we're also looking to re-energise the Anthony Nolan partnership within our secondary schools and redesigning our safety education programme to ensure that every primary and secondary school in East Renfrewshire receives direct engagement from the service throughout the academic year. Moving forward, our focus will remain on safety and well-being of our communities, and I'm confident that together with our partners we can continue to deliver meaningful improvements. At this point, Chair, I would like to hand over to Group Commander Alan Cawtrey to provide a summary analysis of the Q1 report.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. as highlighted previously, last quarter we introduced our new report and there were several points highlighted for improvement. I've taken those points forward. We've also identified another point which I'll touch on in one of our sections where we've identified a difference in the reporting, and I'm pretty sure that this will be ongoing maybe for the next couple of quarters until we have a full year to reflect against it. We've also taken up the point that was highlighted about the ability to put larger typescript within the data boxes. So we're working on that just now, and we're kind of constrained by the first box, but I can assure you it's been reported and I'll keep you fully updated on that. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to look at the report, but I'd just like to run through a few key points if you don't mind. So accidental dwelling fires, we had 8, which was the same amount as the same period last year. Really important though that 7 out of the 8 had no damage or were limited to the room of origin with minimal damage, and only 1 with a more serious nature. Again, it highlights that having operational and tested smoke alarms and us getting into the right premises is key, to be able to speak to people, to provide them a robust fire action plan, to get them out early, having the advance notification, and being able to talk to people and engage at the outset is what's stopping us having as many of these type of fires, and in fact the injuries that come from these fires. Within this reporting period, all the affected premises had working detection, which is really encouraging, and we've always been kind of running to the high 90% with this, and that lets us know that we're getting into the right premises, and we'll continue to do that. So any accidental dwelling fires within an area of more than 1, then we'll target that area to make sure that we're engaging with the people, and obviously following instance we'll continue with our post-domestic incident responses. Accidental dwelling fire casualties which come off of that, clearly it's highlighted when we've had a decrease from 2 last year, the same period, to 0 this year. So clearly again that shows that this practice is working. Non-fire casualties, so we've had an increase of 5 to 9. However, it's worth bearing in mind that all of these were RTCs or road traffic collisions, and 8 of them importantly were first aid or precautionary checkups at the scene. So these are instances of minor injuries. However, we must bear in mind that if you're at a road traffic accident, for example, and somebody is complaining of, for example, pain in their neck or pain in their back, then we need to apply the appropriate preventative action. So that's a precautionary checkup, or if further review is required, then they'll go to hospital. That's recorded as a casualty. So pleased to say that these were, for the most part, minor in nature at these incidents. We'll continue to work on the pop-up sessions that we have, because I think it's really important to identify the age groups that's involved. Whilst we have our education calendar, which we spoke about before and Eddie's highlighted today, and I think that's a brilliant thing to have. So we're getting in contact with the police, with the schools early. That's the education piece, but using our data analysis to identify where the trends are and what age groups are involved is equally as important, because we need to be able to then go and look at how we facilitate getting that learning out to people of all age groups. So we'll continue to work at that, and as we have done before, work in partnership with Police Scotland for pop-up sessions wherever is necessary to get this information out. Deliberate fires we've spoken about, as is the national picture just now. We've noted an increase, and as we spoke about in the previous presentation, we had a significant increase from 43 to 72 in the same period. However, as we all know, this is very much weather related, and looking at the data and identifying trends again, these were mainly during school holidays and also out of school hours during a significant dry period. We'll continue to work away with our initiatives to drive down the demand in this category. We've had fire-related antisocial behaviour and consequences talks regarding call points and deliberate fire setting to over 1,000 high school pupils, which we did in conjunction with Police Scotland during this period. And we'll continue to use our juvenile fire setter intervention programme, so where we identify someone through our colleagues in Police Scotland or through ourselves who've been involved in deliberate fire setting, then we'll get one of our trained officers to start the engagement process with them and work their way through that process to bring it to a successful conclusion. We've had several school visits into both our stations at Clarkston and at Barhead, which involves groups of children coming in. We'll try where we can to identify maybe people that's been involved in this type of behaviour, and when they come in for the visit, we can carry out a targeted approach, as we do as well with our fire skills programme, which I'll talk about a wee bit further as we move on. Non-domestic fires, so we noted a difference in the reporting between our graph and non-domestic fires and the figures that are provided within the report. The reason that is that previously in the older report we recorded the likes of a private garage or a private garden shed would be classed as within that category. However, that's now been changed and that's been removed. So when the new report came through, it shows in the graph as 2 shorter from last year. Therefore, it would make it look like an increase, when in actual fact it was a decrease. So that the figures that we have are correct, but the graph will pick up on the reporting which has been agreed for the new report. As I say, I think that's probably going to take the next 2 quarters to balance out, but I'll be able to put a narrative in with that for the coming quarters to highlight where there's any difference in that figure. Unwanted fire alarm signals, so we've an increase from 22 to 24, so a small increase, but we still have our UFAS champions, our unwanted fire alarm signal champions, working on this. We're very much aware since the new process came in, you know, it's absolutely driven this type of figure down, or this figure down for this type of incident. However, we've got to be careful that they don't creep up, so it's identifying where they are they in care homes, are they in schools, where are they? But we need to identify that. So our UFAS champions, which we'll have in each watch within each station, will identify that, and where they hit certain criteria, that will then move on to our enforcement officers, who will then start to go through the next process for that. Road traffic collisions, we've touched on there, and just as I said previously, we'll continue to have we had 7 the same as last year, but we'll continue to work on identifying who's involved in these accidents and what we can do to drive them down by pop-up sessions, by engagement, and to continue our education programme. Just a quick update on our new home fire safety visit app. So as I spoke about previously, that's an ongoing piece of work just now. We're continuing to receive high risk referrals through this, and we can still do this through our email, through the national website, or through a phone call. We're still going through a piece of work to try and get everybody within our local authorities and our main partners to sign up to the process, and in some cases that's getting held up and through the legal teams. That will just take a bit of time. However, our processes are still working and we're still getting them in, and I think that relates back to where we see in our accidental dwelling fires, and in fact having no casualties, we're still getting the right people and getting engaged with the right people. Fire skills, just like to touch on that. Our last fire skills course was in June. It was another resounding success, and I'd just like to pass on my thanks to everyone, in particular Susan Crane and her team in Community Learning and Development, who fund this course and who started this journey off several years ago now. We have a further 2 courses which are planned for April and May next year. I think it's important with the fire skills course that I've been involved in this from the outset. For the course began many years ago when I worked in East Renfrewshire before, and I think it's key that we don't dilute the process. If you're running one every month or every 2 months, then what happens is you tend to dilute the process. However, having the continued funding is extremely beneficial, and the course is extremely beneficial. I think everybody in here has been at one or other of the courses, and they've seen the benefit that we get, and for to stand up there and have somebody from a previous course tell the new course as one of the participants how beneficial it was to them and how it's changed their life, I think shows its worth, and I think we really need to continue with that. That's everything I've got to highlight, and I'm more than happy to take any questions coming from anyone. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alan. And Eddie, I'll open it up to questions. Who would like to come in? Councillor Bamford.
Waiting because I've always put my hand up first. Sorry. Can I first say thank you to your team at Clarkston? Personally, there's a fire in our street, and it won't be in this date, it'll be in the next quarter, and it took 3 shifts. I mean, it was incredible work, and there was a possibility of a gas explosion, and it was really dangerous for the first hour until Scottish Gas Networks could get there and turn it off. Interestingly, apparently it started in a garden shed, so that'll be something different in your data. So, you know, I did thank the guys and I emailed you, but I just want it on record because it was a huge job, and it could have been it was devastating enough for the family, but could have been worse. See, when you've got your data in about the home safety visits and things, I mean, you do a lot, as we, particularly Katie and I know, Councillor Bragdon and I know, about slips, trips and falls and all that. Could you put any more data about that in? Because I think there's a lot of stuff you do for the HSCP that's not reflected in this, and maybe people don't realise that there's a lot other than fire and rescue you do, and that it gives a bit of more enrichment to your papers. I don't want to give you too much work, but you must have data somewhere.
Absolutely.
So if you could include it.
Absolutely. Councillor, thanks very much for the kind remarks, and as you know, we've been communicating about this as soon as it happened. Thanks for your kind email. I've passed that on to the crews, and I'm really pleased to receive the feedback from yourself that they carried out a really good job on the night, and I would expect nothing less. With regards to the falls referral system which we've set up in East Renfrewshire, as part of our home fire safety visit process, when we go out to someone's house, if we identify, one of the questions we'll ask them, we had to go through quite significant work to implement data sharing protocols to get this, and this will be part of our ongoing process with the new home fire safety visit app that I spoke about earlier. However, we have standalone data sharing protocols which protect us and allow us to continue with that just now. It's really important that we continue this. So last year we had 50 referrals, which obviously positive outcomes because we haven't been back, but key to this process is about when we get in the door, we're a community connector, so we can get in the door and we can speak to somebody and we can ask them. It's a simple question: have you had a fall? Yep. How many have you had in the last year? And if there's been more than one fall in the last year, then we're looking to refer them through the Health and Social Care Partnership. It's not just a piece of work that we do that helps the individual, but it also helps the whole NHS system in terms of at the hospital with bed blocking, with ambulances sitting outside. But key to this with elderly people in particular, if they have, you know, a fall, you usually find they've had more than one fall, and it just takes one significant one for their life to really go downhill, and then there's the cost implications of attending the doctor, going to the hospital, medication, that there's a whole associated bit of business attached to that. So I can absolutely get you an update for each quarter telling you how many referrals we've had, but what I can tell you is that we had 50 over the last year, which for me, if you're getting one, you've made a difference. To get 50 is a significant difference, so I'll keep you updated on that, absolutely.
Thanks, Caroline, for raising that important issue, and thanks for your comments on that. As Caroline said, I think a lot of the public wouldn't be aware of that, and it is really good preventative work, so thanks for raising that, Caroline. Any other questions? Councillor Wallace.
Excuse me, thank you, Chair. No, I had one or two questions in terms of deliberate fires and unwanted fire alarm signals, but I think that's been well addressed in the presentation there. I'm thinking more in general terms. I dare say the officers here will have been well aware of the article in Sunday's Herald, Scotland's Fire Service in Meltdown. Special investigation, and it's to do with the dire warning issued over an 800 million budget shortfall and a 600 million in real terms cuts. Now, I'd be interested to hear what your views are on that and really how that is impacting or will impact on East Renfrewshire's service. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Councillor Wallace, for your question. We're fully aware of the article within the Herald on Sunday. The impact on East Renfrewshire is absolutely zero. This is part of the service delivery review. The impact within my responsibility is in Inverclyde, where there's two options for change, affecting both Greenock and also Port Glasgow stations. In regards to East Renfrewshire, we currently have two fire stations, which are Clarkston and Barrhead. both of which are staffed 24/7 and will continue to be staffed 24/7. So in regards to reassurances for the community, in regards to a response model, there is no difference within the local authority area. You're quite right to highlight obviously the challenges that we've got in regards to our infrastructure and the 800 million backfall that we've got in regards to dignified facilities, and also bringing our estate up to standard when we talk about decontamination, which is another big challenge that we've got. I think every public service have got these challenges when it comes to their property. Something that we're fully aware of, and that's part of the reason for the change itself, is to try to redirect some of the finances to bring in our portfolio up to a sufficient standard. But as I said in my introduction, the communities of East Renfrewshire is absolutely paramount to myself, and that will be a clear focus as we move forward, along with our prevention theme that Group Commander Cawtrey has spoke about in great depth. So to answer your question, there is going to be no impact within the local authority area.
Councillor Wallace, you'd like to come back in?
Yes, so you're making it very clear that a national drop of 800 million shortfall and a 600 million in real terms is going to have no effect whatsoever on East Renfrewshire's fire service. If you could just confirm that, thanks.
Yes, I'm making it clear that with the numbers that you've actually said, it's got no impact whatsoever in the response model that we've got within East Renfrewshire.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I also saw the same article and looked at it in detail, and I appreciate the assurances because, well, I think recent incidents in the area highlights that the service is absolutely required, and I'm sure you realise you'll get 100% support from us, and if it was going to be affected, then we'd be expressing our concerns. One thing that, although it touched on in the report, that I appreciate that we've got the resources in terms of the fire stations and the vehicles, etc., but recruitment was also so. Are you seeing any issues where you have to, any recruitment issues for, in particular, that you might affect East Renfrewshire, where people retiring and getting new officers in?
Thanks, Councillor. No, I'd answer that. So, in terms of recruitment, if I look at the target operating model, which is a model that we work to across the whole service, so if, for example, our target operating model within Clapston is 25, I can report back to you just now that we have a full operating model within there. We've recently taken on 11 recruits over the past 2 years, and they're progressing absolutely fine along the track. And we have a process within East Renfrewshire, as we have across the whole service, but I'll speak purely about East Renfrewshire just now, where we have a personnel manager who will monitor that. Myself as the group commander for East Renfrewshire will tie in with the station commander, and we'll be looking on a monthly basis at who's due to retire, where we've got a skills shortage, where we have, and in actual fact we've just carried out a piece of work there to balance the drivers right across Barrhead and Clapston. So for example, if we have 4 drivers on one watch, but we only have 1 on another, then we're preparing for the future. So we've actually asked people to move onto another watch and take a non-driver and replace them with them. But I can report back that we have a full establishment just now right across both stations, and that will continue to be so. That will be backfilled by, there's a recruitment programme which has just started just now for whole-time firefighters, and we also have our migration process where in some cases on-call firefighters will have the ability to transfer into the whole-time. We don't have on-call stations within East Renfrewshire currently, and no provision for that in the future. So that doesn't impact us, but that's what goes on to bring people back into the service. But we've got a full establishment just now, and we'll continue to have that.
Great. Well, and I also think that the education programmes that happen and that we've all seen, I think there may be 1 or 2 potential firefighters in these young people, because
everybody's talking to them in the fire skills course, so hopefully we can We've had a few already that's shown interest, so that's another great thing that comes off of that.
I'm not surprised, and it shows you that, I mean, it's just another reason why it's just a great thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got all the questions. Just a couple of comments from myself. First of all, on the unwanted fire alarm signals, really pleasing to see there was only one in an educational establishment. We know that was a massive issue for you 18 months, 2 years ago. But obviously that burden is now on care homes and sheltered homes. So again, there's probably, I'm sure you're already doing this in terms of communications and dialogue with social care to make sure that message is out there. So so that was good to see on education establishments. Comment on the fire skills course. So it was a real pleasure to go and attend and actually sit on one of the classes, not the graduation ceremony. And for other members' benefits, this was actually on road speeding and road safety. And the quality of the presentations and the teaching was excellent. And you could really see really strong engagement coming from and good questioning coming from the people that were attending. So just to give my thanks for that and recognition of the good work that's going on there. And then finally, this is probably for the next quarter's report, but if there's anything you'd like to say to us about the fire that was close to the broom shops recently, which was obviously pretty devastating for those residents.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the kind words, Councillor. And also, I have got the Chair. Sorry, I've also got I've been speaking briefly this morning off table about that file that you refer to, and I'll provide an update on that. However, I'm also happy to provide any information off table with regards to that specific fire. If you require any information, it's no problem at all.
That's fine. Thanks very much, and I understand you'll still be doing investigation work on that as well at this stage. So, if there are no other questions of our fire colleagues, that brings us to an end to this meeting. So thanks to everyone for their attendance today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.